Ready, set, art. Ducks in colored pencils. So this is to help practice for the duck stamp contest. You are allowed to do the duck stamp contest in regular graphite pencil, although I did notice that not one winner won with graphite pencil. It was all colored colored pieces. So I wanted to make sure to demonstrate how to do the ducks in colored pencil. All right, we're going to start with our basic mallard, right? So if you look at it, has the green top, the gray feathering, that little blue under here, the yellow beak, and some orange type feet. So I'm going to show how to get this one started. And then after that one, I want to talk about water, how to deal with water. So you're going to also draw the mallard again, and we're going to practice water with grass, water with the grass, like how to do that. Because I did notice if you're going to do this assignment for the duck stamp contest, it's better to crop in, right? And only really be up close on it. And you may have to do some water. The water is challenging. If you can add grass to it, like there's grass in the water, I do think that helps, or maybe even some rocks. It's a little easier. Water is kind of a challenge, but we're going to try it out. The other thing to do when you go to the main assignment is if you're drawing the duck out of the water, like it's on the ground or it's about to go near the water, that might be a little easier as well. Some pretty sunset in the back, or a sunrise, there's ducks flying in the background. You know, how do you spice it up? I will say this is easier, but we're going to try both in case you choose one or the other. And there's plenty of photos to go from. There's other different colored ducks, but at least this gives you an idea of how to do this in colored pencil, right? Okay, so first step is to sketch it out. And we're going to use our basic proportion skills by angling, right? So we take our pencil and we angle the body. Whoops, that angle is way too strong. That's why we have erasers. So artists make mistakes all the time, no big deal. Angle the head, then the beak, the tail area, and that looks about right. Next part is creating the body shape. We already did this in graphite, so it should be a little easier by now. That's its basic shape. You know, personally, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of ducks, but I like, you know, cooking duck. That's for sure. I love cooking duck. All right, so I'm going to bring this neck up. And like I said in the last video with graphite, the head of a duck is different than a regular bird. A regular bird is more like this. It has a rounder head, and then the beak is like this, and this middle part leads to the eye. Ducks aren't like that. So I'll kind of quickly show. I did it in the last video, but there we go. This part goes out a little further. Okay, and then kind of like that, right? And the bottom part of the beak is really down low, whereas most birds it's up higher, and this is down low, right? That, and then the eye is higher than than the normal fowl. Okay, let's go ahead and get in our feet. Right? This one's kind of set back more, and that's okay. All right, so we have our basic form. I drew it darker so you can see, but for me, I'm going to have to lightly erase so I can start doing the coloring part. I want to mainly go into green. So let's go look at my colored pencils. I have this colored pencil, and I'm using those these crazy art pencils. If you have Prismacolor or another brand, that's perfectly fine. They are a little easier to use. I had to learn how to take these colors and kind of overlap other colors to get it just right. So let's go ahead with this green. Sorry. All right. create this outline. Colored pencil does erase, not too much, but it does erase a little bit, which is pretty nice. When I was growing up, colored pencils were notorious for not erasing well, but they made some advancements. Okay, that looks good. Okay. And we're going to fill this in. I'm not going to color the whole thing because you have an example attached in Google Classroom to show the finished part, but I do want to show how to at least get started. Alright, so I'm going to leave it very light around it so it creates a highlight around the dark eye. Okay? What do I mean by that? So, for instance, I'm going darker now. See that? It'll stay light around the eye. It's a pain to erase such a small area later. I'm going to use a little of this kind of yellow ochre in the thing. It's called, it's hard to read, Orange Crush. Okay, so I'll just test it here. Yeah, that's good. I'm trying to add kind of this yellow tone without using that yellow, but it's getting closer to how the actual mallard looked. And now I'm going to start with the black. So the black, I think, really helps this piece. I'm not a fan of usually using black when it comes to realism and color, mostly because it has a tendency to deaden a piece. So just kind of be careful of how much black you use. And I'll show a trick with the black in just a moment. Okay, so hold on. I'm going to go ahead and do this eye. And when I outline and I get toward the top here, I'm going to add a little white circle. That's going to be my highlight. You know how it reflects an eye. See that? Nice, right? Okay, so once I add this black in, I usually like to go back in and then overlap with the green and get even darker. The thing with colored pencils is that it's a combination of pigment and wax. Pigment and wax. So as you layer, the wax actually starts to blend, which is usually the common complaint with colored pencils, is it's harder to blend. Well, that's because you have to layer it a lot. You can see it's starting to get closer, right? See, as we keep going, kind of gently. Now, if you're thinking, why can't I have just drawn darker before? Can I have just done that? You could, except sometimes you really need to keep some areas light, and it helps as you build so that you don't accidentally go too far. Alright, so I can keep going, but eventually you're going to add these little textured lines in for the feathers, just, you know, here and there, kind of like this, little feathers. So it kind of mimics the idea of your bird. Sometimes I add a few little lines. Alright, and I could keep going, but I think you would get the idea. I like to layer more orange, and then I kind of go back and forth with the green so you get it just right. Let's look at the yellow, and then I'll go to the gray. I'll try to be as quick as possible. These videos only hold so much data. I mean, they hold too much data, and if I go too long, then what ends up happening is I can't put it into Google Classroom, so I can only do this so quickly. Alright, so I put in that base yellow. I'm going to go in with this darker brownish color. It is, sorry, it's in gold, so it's hard to read. Pumpkin orange. Okay, and I kind of go in the middle. See that? In the middle of it to create that color. I'm also going to use the cappuccino color. There it is. It's a super dark brown. Look at that. See, things are starting to come together, right? Okay, I'm going to move on to the feathering. I'm only going to do a few feathers because I think you guys would get the basic idea. I need my darker gray. Alright, so I'm going to gently fill this part in, not the whole thing, because again, you guys would get the idea. And then I'm going to start kind of checkering in some of the grays here. like this. Sorry, that's my table. And then I go back to my black and a few more little feather lines. See that? And I'm going to add this little black stripe, because if you've ever seen a mallard, they have this little white stripe right here. Okay, that gets you the idea of how to get that section going. Once I had it filled in, I looked back at the photo and I noticed there was a shadow here and a shadow here and here, and then I shaded that part in. Let's look at the feathers here. There is a little special trick. It's the same that I showed in the other video, that essentially you put in these feathers. Here's my guarded little feathers, right? Then the next group, and you can keep going, but you would imagine. But the first trick is you kind of lightly shade in, and instead of just outlining, I go underneath and shade outward. So here's the underline, and I shade darker there, and I fade out. See that? Right now it doesn't, it's kind of scratchy looking, right? But that's okay. I'll show you a trick in just a moment with colored pencil. All right, I'm adding little feather lines in. That's what's here. Let's go to the black. Sorry, we only have so much time, right? Okay. Black. And then you would keep doing that till you get to here. I'm going to go to my white pencil and blend. Look at that. If you go right across like that, it gives that cool blended look. And you probably have to go darker at some point, but you keep going until you have it all filled in. For the feet, it's really the same type of color choices that I used here, but I also used some orange. That helps you to figure out this, and you want to get it to this point. Let's quickly go to this one. All right. So you know how to color in a duck. That's great. What I really want to show is the water and the grass. All right. So you're going to draw the same type of duck. If you notice the body is thinner this time, that's because part of it is underwater, right? So before, you're like, whoa, that's a big body, but you're covering part of it up. Okay, so I'm going to take my pencil. When you do your main piece, draw much bigger. You will have a much easier time. You don't want to have to deal with drawing all this water in, because it is a lot. Okay. All right, so I have my bird in. All right, so imagine I colored it. Okay. Then the duck is going this way. So what I'm going to do is have my water lines like this. See that? Oh, it's starting to make sense, right? Okay, and you're just, then from there, other water areas might look more like this. Okay. But then we'll have some grass later. Okay. So now we have this part, and you would section off where your light areas are. Because of the reflection, you could see the white areas. I eventually did yellow to go with this part. So you kind of have to section off where your reflection of your duck is going to be, which is what I did here. Okay, and then I go back to those ripples and I kind of outline that. I drew it darker there so you can see, but I do have to lightly erase. Let's go with our blue. Where is my beautiful blue? Alright, this one is actually just labeled blue. And let's go to here, right? I'm going to go ahead and kind of gently fill in. And in this case, when I looked at the photos, they did use some black. So I'm going to put some black in. It's just like when we did the graphite. It was darker on one edge, and then it kind of gradually went back in. And then I went back with my blue pencil over this, kind of covering up that black. I'm doing that. Okay. I want to keep this part white, so I'm going to leave that alone. And then I go up to the edge, fill in, and I would repeat the same technique here. In this case, in between the blue here, I picked the colors that I had done here, and I kind of lightly put those in. And then I went back with the white and blended on top. And that helped to do the reflection that you see right here. Let's talk about the grass. So for the grass, you're going to go ahead and you kind of go up and down like this. And you're going to also use some green because, yes, there's green in the grass, right? Here and there. And then at this point, I like to use my cappuccino brown. Here it is. And I actually start shaping it from there. Those grasses that you see in the water. And I'm going to focus on just one section instead of doing the whole thing because it does, you know, it would take a while for you to watch, right? So look at that. And then I'll do a little darker here. I like to go back with this color and kind of blend. And then maybe some white. All right. Now when you go in with the blue, make sure that you're also including the reflection of the grass. See how I'm kind of wiggling it out like that? All right. Hold on. I'm going to show you a trick with the eraser in just a moment. I'm going to go right up into this grass area. You kind of have to get the blue in. It's shadows in here, right, as it recedes back. See that? Go back with my blue. I know I'm drawing very, very fast, but as you know, I was saying that the data could only fill up so much. Okay. The reflection in the water of the grass, I'm going to put that same kind of color choice, but I'm not going to completely fill it in. And then that green, wherever it went, oops, flew this way. Some of my cappuccino brown. I'm going to go ahead and smear some white in. So now I'm going over the whole thing and it's starting to smear back and forth. That's what I want because you know how water is. It kind of looks like it's going back and forth in a ripple. Now that I have that in, it makes it easier for me to add a few more lines right on top to mimic how water is, right? We know how water is. It's kind of like waves. Some black. Right, that helps to figure out the reflections here. You saw how this section was done. In other areas with water, it's more just like waves, as long as you kind of alternate your values, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, medium. In other cases, it could be more abstract looking like this. It depends on the photo that you're working from. So I hope that helps to figure out how to draw water. And like in this section and how to deal with reflections, I already showed how to deal with drawing something like this in the first one. So essentially you need to draw just one section. I only want to see from here to here. And you'll see in the attached video, the attached document, that it's just the cropped version of this. So that should help you to figure out how to do the water, the mallard, and the grass. Thank you and good luck.